Hello everyone, unfortunately we had a problem with our video record this morning, so this episode of Talk to the Devils is audio only on YouTube, I'm afraid. Despite that and despite the result to Aston Villa, it was still a good discussion. There's lots of detail in there about the game, about the injuries, about the January transfer window as well. Also a preview to Newcastle, so hopefully you can still enjoy it. And while I've got you, I need to point out that our next episode after that Newcastle game will be another old school record post-game in the press box, so that'll be out as quick as we can get it after that game on Boxing Day. But anyway, from all of us at Talk the Devils, a very Merry Christmas, and let's get into it. This is Talk the Devils, the athletics show dedicated to Manchester United. Coming up today, defeat to Aston Villa, but maybe some encouragement still and some mitigation for it as well, because the injuries are really piling up. We'll have the latest on Bruno Fernandes and Kobbie Mainoo and what impact all these injury issues may have on the January transfer window. And of course, there's a football match to preview too, with United in action next on Boxing Day against Newcastle. We might mention a certain someone in a certain position as well that's got Carl's DMs alive, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. Everyone's here, Carl, Laurie and Andy. How are we doing? You okay?
Very good, yeah. How are you?
Yeah, all good. We were there.
DMs, Ian, DMs.
DMs? DMs and
Nothing.
DMs, hey?
DMs
and DMs. Let's talk about that a little bit later. We'll talk about the details of the defeat first, if we can. I mean, Carl, you were there at Villa Park like me. Funny to have a defeat that doesn't feel like it prompts any sort of crisis. I mean, United actually played all right and deserved a bit more out of the game, really, didn't they?
It was certainly winnable. Look, Aston Villa are the form team, one of the form teams in the Premier League. They're right on the cusp of a title race. United were without, let's call them 3-4 of their best starters, maybe even more than that. Lost their captain at half-time and still were 2 wonky finishes away from getting at least a point. So, not too disappointing. Ruben Amorim in his post-match said he believed Man United were the better team, and I could see the argument there.
Yeah, Critch posted, Andy, a defeat that doesn't feel like it will spark a referendum on the manager, the ownership, the transfer business, or the academy. Weird.
I agree with him. I thought United played well. It's very frustrating because United didn't get anything from the game. Villa, we said in the last podcast, winning all the time by a single goal, but United were the better team in the first half and the second half without the captain, missing half the team. Good to see some of the young lads coming on. You've got, I mean, these things happen in football, but I certainly don't feel the sense of deflation after the draws at home to West Ham or after the Everton game. United, when they were attacking, there's some really good football, but you got to take the chances in. Cunha had a good chance, Sesko had a couple of half chances, and that's where the frustration comes from. If United play like that, they're going to win far more games than they draw or lose.
I kind of agree with that, Laurie, I think. I think the last 2 matches United haven't won. Maybe in some ways it's a measure of our expectations perhaps altering a little bit, and there'll be some people telling us that this is Manchester United after all. But drawing to Bournemouth, losing to Aston Villa is not great, the results anyway. But the performances that we've seen in both those games, the moments that United have had, the chances they've created, it does feel like there is a bit more reason to be optimistic about what might be ahead, despite the injuries, which of course we'll get into, which are mounting now.
Yeah, I think that's the key point, isn't it? The chances being created, which is what we were starved of last season. And so for that to be moving on and to be continuing even with Mbeumo, Ahmad, Mazraoui to a lesser degree, going off to AFCON at Villa Park, a place that obviously is like a fortress really under Unai Emery. I think that was encouraging, right? And like some of the chances that were created were from really nice moves, particularly Cunha's header in the second half, Mount over to Dorgu. Dorgu had a good game actually at left wing back, and his cross was precise to Cunha. He should have scored, shouldn't he? It had to be going in the back of the net. But other moments where you can see what they're working on the training pitch in terms of the high press, Dorgu creating that chance for Cunha that he scored brilliantly, I have to say. I think it's just the fact that they haven't kept a clean sheet again. Fine, okay, it's away at Villa, but it's one all season, and the kind of softness of the goals that they're conceding. I know they're 2 really brilliant moments of skill by Morgan Rogers, who's in incredible form, but they could have been avoided again, like the goals against Bournemouth. So that's the kind of concern that's underlying the optimism, I guess.
Yeah, Amorim said, Carl, that he thought the team had actually defended well. And when you looked at those 2 goals scored by Morgan Rogers. I'm just looking for the stat on our running order here. Yeah, the 2 goals scored by Morgan Rogers were from a combined XG of less than 0.1. So they are ridiculous finishes, but in both cases there was a couple of details that United could have done better on. Lenny Yoro with the first, Diogo Dalot with the second, and that's the frustration in its details and those very, very small moments which have ultimately cost Manchester United the game in what was a performance where they outplayed Aston Villa, an Aston Villa team in their best winning run of form in over 100 years, who were sort of pushing their way into the title race. It's a difficult game, but it's one that they took on well.
22 home wins in 27 matches in all competitions for Villa. And I'd say in that first half, United were the better side. One thing that really stood out about the defensive approach, or the approach throughout the game, was how high Dorgu and Dalot were. They were pushed really, really high up, looking to pin back Aston Villa's fullbacks. Villa don't really have natural wingers, so it's up to the fullbacks to provide that width. So doing that made it, call it a pretty even arm wrestle. I think that was a really good tactical approach. Crystal Palace have been a bogey side for Aston Villa in recent seasons, and I think this is another bit that Amorim may have just from Oliver Glasner. But it worked. The difficulty there is, okay, it's really hard to legislate for 2 amazing finishes like that. It is quite easy to legislate for not letting the form player get onto his strongest foot in his most dangerous area to shoot. I watched Match of the Day last night, and there's 2 or 3 instances where they're just showing parts where Lenny Yoro should just be closing Rodgers down. So Rodgers' first touch for the first goal before he cuts inside and does his nonsense, it was kind of heavy, and Yoro could have been quick at closing him down to prevent him from getting that recovery and in that there. I think those are the margins. You've got 2 very young centre-backs in Aiden Heaven and Lenny Yoro right now. Heaven's certainly a lot more aggressive than Yoro, and I think he's, at the moment, getting a bit of the benefit of doubt from referees. I hope it continues, because he's playing on the right side of dangerous. You want Lenny Yoro to have a little bit more of that, a little bit more of try and put your elbow in his back, if you please.
He's 20 years old, and that's the thing you come back to, Andy. And United are relying on Yoro and Heaven. I thought Heaven had a pretty good first half, especially up against Ollie Watkins, kept him very quiet. And Morgan Rogers had not done a great deal in the game until he scored that first goal. In fact, Unai Emery said after the match he was quite disappointed with Rogers' overall performance, despite being the match winner with two brilliant goals. It is these small details, but when you have got young defenders like this, it is going to happen, isn't it, Andy?
I thought Heaven played well, maybe even his best game right from the start. He made up ground. He won the ball off Watkins 4 or 5 minutes in, and then he saved his team again 3 minutes later. It was quite a frantic start before United settles. I thought Luke Shaw was okay. This is a defence missing key players. Yoro had a poor game. You've got to get out quicker for both of Rodgers' goals. Show him down the line rather than let him cut inside. And I think that Lenny Yoro's an incredible talent, but he's got to reflect and hopefully improve and cut out errors like that. I know United are of the thinking that it's got to be more aggressive. It wasn't a good look. And it's a shame because so much of the attacking play was really exciting, and Carl's quite right about Dorgu pushing right on. Unai Emery is one of the best tacticians in world football, and Ruben Amorim, in my opinion, had the better of him for much of the game. Can you legislate for those 2 wonder strikes? And they were fantastic goals. I don't think the goalkeeper could have done much more than that. And then even when United lost the captain, so you've lost Bruno, you've lost Casemiro, Ugarte was subpar. You're carrying players because you've got players coming in who are not playing as well as some of the other ones. I thought Cunha had a very good game, but you've got to put that header in.
Yeah.
You've just got to take those chances. But it leads me back to that point about frustration. But so many good parts of that performance. Even Lisandro Martinez, when he came on, I thought he looked okay.
Lisandro Martinez in defensive midfield, Carl.
Lisandro Martinez in defensive midfield as I live and breathe. If you follow us on the Talk of Devils WhatsApp, you can see my face when it was officially confirmed Martinez would be playing in defensive midfield. I was agog. I never thought it happened. Unfortunately, the thing that's taken for it to happen is an injury to Bruno Fernandes, coupled with an injury to Mainoo and a suspension to Casemiro. But he did pretty well in that role. So the midfield in the first half was very much Manuel Ugarte as the deepest midfielder, and then it would sort of mount as a spare man working with Fernandes. So that, Ugarte is at the base of a triangle. And then that changed up a little bit more. So it was Ugarte and Martinez more of in an even partnership. Ugarte did not have a great game at Villa Park, I must say. I think Martinez boosted or made things a little bit more comfortable in the second half, gave him a little bit more protection. So Casemiro coming back for Boxing Day. I'm not sure if Martinez is going to be continuing defensive midfield, but we'll see. We'll see.
Just give us an insight. What were the DMs like when he played DM?
Yeah, quite a few people went, wow, look at this, Carl. And I was going, yeah, fair play. Hand me the humble pie.
I put pray for Carl Anker in the WhatsApp group, Laurie, didn't I?
Yes. Well, I guess, why have you been against Martinez being a defensive midfielder? I know he's a centre-back and he's played 52 minutes, I think, as defensive midfielder, but it felt like it could be a transformation for him. And when you look at the kind of passes that he was making, it just was really impressive, wasn't it? The base of that midfield where he was picking the passes, sort of firing them through. I think I looked, it was like 29 successful out of 32, so that 91% success rate, and obviously a breaking up play. And I know maybe it's the game state or whatever, but against the Villa side that's pretty strong in midfield, it's not a bad debut in that role, is it?
It wasn't a bad debut, absolutely. Okay, first thing I was reluctant about, the knee injuries.
Definitely.
2 serious knee injuries. One of them complete freak accident, West Ham player just dropping on top of him. But another one endured by tackling in wide areas. Martinez seems to prefer to have the game mostly in front of him. Obviously, there's that horrible incident against Mohamed Salah at Anfield where he gets dragged out into wide space and just sort of falls for a give and go. And I went, okay, I prefer Martinez. Well, now he's recovering from a knee injury and we're trying to get used to it, the pace that he's used to. Oh, it's a bad sentence. As he gets reacclimatized to Premier League football and the pace of Premier League football, it's best to put him in his strongest position rather than a midfield position that we've been talking about for ages is probably too much for Casemiro. And Casemiro is one of the best defensive midfielders of all time. So I thought, let's ease Martinez back in. There's also that Erik ten Hag quote that I've gone back to several times before, and I thought, well, there's no coach out there that knows Lisandro Martinez better than Erik ten Hag. I know the comment section went, well, what did Erik ten Hag know? He finished this way, which is really interesting because I remember when people tell me, oh, Carl, you think you're smarter than Erik ten Hag? I went, well, no, ten Hag's smarter than me in this bit. And then it's flipped. So here we go there. And also, aerial duels. I think one thing that is becoming really, really important as we're talking about, I mean, this season especially, Amorim keeps talking about second balls. We keep talking about aerial duels, long throws. If we're looking at some of United's midfield players, Mason Mount, good player, but more of a lover than a fighter in the air. Mainoo, good player, not the best in the air. It's Casemiro and Casemiro, then Bruno Fernandes, and then you've got this sort of like deep curve there. And Lisandro Martinez fighting for high balls in central midfield next to someone like, well, I assumed it would have been Bruno Fernandes, had me a little bit sceptical. So those are my reasons, among other reasons, why I've been so handbrake on and sceptical to Lisandro Martinez in defensive midfield. But needs must, necessity the mother of invention, and I'll give him a B+ for that. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think it is. And it was interesting to see him in that role, like Laurie says, against the Villa side, away from home, who are strong in midfield. The tactical tweak even that Amorim made in the first half with having almost 2 number 8s with Mount and Bruno Fernandes in front of Ugarte actually worked. You know, they weren't outnumbered in midfield. If anything, Manchester United were winning the midfield battle and it gave them a platform. But Laurie, the concern now is that midfield area because of the list of absentees. Bruno Fernandes, Amorim said after the match, it was a soft tissue issue. He's likely to be missing some matches, which obviously is plural, so it might just be the Newcastle game. It might be the next couple of weeks. It looked like a hamstring problem. Kobbie Mainoo, the club said before the game, was injured in the final training session before the match against Aston Villa. It's a calf problem. Again, it sounds like he's missing for Boxing Day. Casemiro is back, which is good news, but United have got their most intense period of matches. They're already missing the players for AFCON. This was already a point where they were going to be stretched, and these 2 injuries leave them even shorter.
Yeah, I think the collective groan from Manchester United fans was audible from Villa Park when you saw Bruno Fernandes just kick the ball out, feel his hamstring. And in that moment, you know he can't continue, because if you're stopping a game mid-flow, how can you really stay on? He obviously tried. And we can debate whether Amorim should have made that decision for him, because he was basically walking around the pitch from that moment on. But I think you've got to give your captain and a guy that, you know, will play through pain the opportunity to try and run it off if it's you know, something that can be done.
He actually doesn't know what it's like to get a muscle injury.
There we go, that's what I'm thinking, yeah.
He probably was like, what's this?
Like, does he actually know what has happened to him? Yeah, he's as clueless as the rest of us on that. But it is alarming, really, that he is going to be out now for, you know, the busiest period of the season. Let's see how many games he misses. Kobbie Mainoo, you know, frustrating one, really, because I think he was in contention to start this game. I know there's been a lot of focus on him, you know, the free Kobbie t-shirt from his brother, but I don't think Amorim would have factored that into his selection on Sunday, actually. And so whether he would have started over Ugarte or whether it would have been another slight tweak, I don't know, because I do think it was an important tweak that you mentioned there, Ian, the kind of tactical approach from Amorim. I'm saying he might have thought that himself, Carl, not necessarily nicking it from Oliver Glasner as the 4-4-2 out of shape, or the high wing backs as well. Just putting it out there, just to kind of do a defence for the manager of United. But I think that, but then you've got these issues, right? So, okay, Casemiro will come back in. You know, he was just suspended. Does Lisandro Martinez become then a midfield option? I guess maybe.
I think it's a risk, Laurie, to be honest. When he's had the knee issues he's had, he's been out for a long time. Doing it for 45 minutes at Villa with all the issues going on is one thing. Starting the game on Boxing Day a few days later.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't start him. I just mean in terms of an alternate.
Yeah, okay.
I suppose he'd have to, you know, use Ugarte as the alternate. You can't really put Martinez in ahead of him. I mean, the other one people have been talking about as a makeshift sort of central midfielder in that regard is Aiden Heaven, right? And but I think to Andy's point, I think he was, you know, better. The one bit actually that I liked, you know, from his performance was in that one that Carl mentioned, the Ollie Watkins challenge, that, you know, perhaps was on the edge a little bit, but he went out to where the ball was rather than, you know, against Bournemouth where he kind of stayed in the centre of his box. So he'd obviously learned, it seemed to me, go towards the ball, make that challenge, stop the person with the possession that might be having a shot away. So anyway, you are getting thin on the ground. So I suppose in that regard, it was great to see Jack Fletcher get some minutes. I mean, he's really a number 10. Obviously, it's his debut, you know, for United, so we should recognise that. And Shea Lacey as well, two 18-year-olds coming off the bench, and, you know, a difficult circumstance, I suppose, for them to try and affect the game. But hopefully that then promises, you know, a little bit more activity as we go along with AFCON, clearly taking out a few players. But actually, I don't know if Jack Fletcher would really be an alternative to Bruno Fernandes. It's a big hole to fill that one. I thought Mason Mount, again, I know I'm going to sort of bang that drum, but he had a really good game, I thought, you know, knitting the play together. So maybe he takes on more responsibility if Bruno Fernandes is out. But yeah, it does give Ruben Amorim a lot of problems to fix when he had problems to fix the other way, where he had too many players to try and fit into his team.
Yeah, those issues have gone, haven't they? Absolutely. It's the exact opposite almost. We sort of pontificated a bit about what the future might be for Bruno Fernandes, and Manchester United without Bruno Fernandes is not something we've seen much of across his time in Manchester. I mean, he's missed 3 matches, I make it, with injury or illness. He's obviously been suspended as well during that time. In 6 years, 3 games missed through injury in 6 years is absolutely remarkable. How will they cope without him? He's the captain as well. He's the most important player. He's a huge miss, isn't he?
I'd add to that he's the best player and he's been hugely influential, easily the best signing in the post-Ferguson era. How will he cope? We're going to soon find out. You know, some of the biggest turning points in Manchester United's history have been when the club have needed to rely on youth. And more recently, you know, Marcus Rashford got his call up because of injury. Louis van Gaal didn't really care much for the youth system until he had to, until his squad was decimated by injury. It seems so harsh. United have had so few games that when we have got the games, the injuries are piling up. I'd love Jack Fletcher to be a success. It was great to see him come on. Same with Shea Lacey as well. There's a sink or swim argument. They're very, very, very talented. You've got players like Ugarte who need minutes. It was frankly disappointing against Villa. They might push back and say, well, you can't just come in, you need a run of games, and I get those arguments. But aside from them, Bruno Fernandes is hugely influential. He was at the heart of most of the things that Manchester United did well. And some of the link up with Mason Mount or sprained balls out to Delo or to Dorgu or to Cunha was really impressive. So big blow. You cannot dress it up any other way. It just takes me back to years ago. Brian Robson was so important for Man United, but he was often injured. Bruno Fernandes isn't often injured, but he's so important for Manchester United. We're going to see what it's like life without him.
Yeah, we'll talk a little bit later about exactly what Amorim might do in the Newcastle game. But Andy, just to stay on the point about Jack Fletcher and Shea Lacey, if we can, I mean, 255 and 256 are their numbers from the academy. Shea Lacey in particular has been on the bench the last few matches. There's been a call for him to get an opportunity. Jack Fletcher's been on the bench a couple of times as well, in fairness. But you wrote this week about Ruben Amorim's comments that have caused a bit of a stir, to be fair. They were actually about the players who were out on loan, Toby Collier and Harry Amas, also Chido as well, who isn't out on loan. And he said there is an entitlement around the club from young players to play and to feature and to be promoted. What do you make of this whole conversation?
I've written 1,500 words on it and I stand by every word. I wrote that after his comments last week, where I felt it was not needed to name check players. I think young players need support. They'd not prompted anything. They'd not posted anything on social media, Harry Amas or Chido or Collier at West Brom. I don't see how that helps the club. I don't see how it helps Manchester United's recruitment when the head coach is saying stuff like that. I actually agree with a lot of the stuff that he said on Friday. This pushback from young players on social media, it's not a wise idea for them to do that. There's two pretty strong arguments here. You've got the new decision makers at United who think there is significant room for improvement with the youth system. Brilliant, bring it on. You've got people who've left the club who feel that the youth system was actually really good as it was, and they'll point to the players who've come through. That is also a legitimate argument. I'd rather look at the future of Manchester United, and if people like Jason Wilcox thinks there is room for improvement, and he knows the youth scene, to be fair to him, he was heavily involved at Manchester City, bring it on. If Manchester United are going to start recruiting better players, fantastic. But I thought that Ruben Amorim spoke well on Friday about this idea of entitlement. There has been issues with younger players, but I felt his comments earlier on in the week, I didn't agree with them, and I wrote that. I just can't see how any good can come from name-checking players completely unprompted. Them lads have done absolutely nothing wrong. Them lads are not the cause of Manchester United's problems. They're young lads with half a chance of making it, and maybe they won't do. Ruben Amorim is absolutely entitled to his opinion. And I'd much rather have an honest manager than someone who says nothing, who talks in cliches. And he's also irritated, I think, by the constant questioning around Kobbie Mainoo. And he's human. I think if I was him, I'd be irritated as well. Because you've got to be private, and what you can say publicly is often slightly different. But then he said it publicly last week, and that's why you saw the reaction. I think most United fans are with the manager here. Certainly sensed that since Friday. I think they support the fact that he's strong. He's moved out difficult players from the dressing room. And if he continues to do that, then great.
I think they're with the manager in terms of the performance level as well in these last two matches. Certainly in terms of the creativity that United fans have seen. I mean, moments in that Bournemouth game were as exciting as it's got under Ruben Amorim. The tweak in the system as well in these two games in two different directions, in fairness, is something that I think fans can get behind as well, because it's worked in those games in terms of bringing a bit more creativity and a bit more free-flowing football. It's felt better to watch despite, like we said before, the results not being as good. Laurie, let's come back to the conversation about the players missing. I mean, what effect do you think this has on the January transfer window now for United? Ruben Amorim spoke after the game. He said it's important they stick to the plan and they don't do anything out of any sense of panic. But do you think it has an effect on January, the number of players now missing?
It will have a factor, right? I mean, I think the kind of desire by United, though, is to only do deals in January for a significant fee if it was something they would have done in the summer and they just brought it forward, basically. So, yeah, Antoine Semenyo clearly falls into that bracket. Now, does he then solve, the issues as you just discussed in central midfield? Perhaps not really, but maybe.
What about a Martinez and Semenyo partnership in that midfield? Would that not work? No.
Yeah, exactly. There we go. Get them two as the double pivot. Yeah, absolutely. You never know. Listen,
it's nearly as unlikely as Jack
really.
Fletcher and Lisandro Martinez finishing the game as a midfield too. To be fair, like it happened yesterday, you wouldn't have predicted that at kickoff.
It's Man United. You can't write anything off.
No,
but I do think that the likes of the central midfielders that we've been speaking about for a long time, I don't think will be gettable in January. So it comes down to, do you let Kobbie Mainoo go on loan as is his desire to get more minutes, and then do you bring somebody else in on a temporary basis? Let's see. I think that the Semenyo thing is clearly something that's ongoing. Whether or not that actually materialises in January is another matter, but I don't know how much the injuries will necessarily prompt action. I think this kind of hierarchy want to be known as not reactive, really, and making decisions based on the long-term sort of benefit of the club. And the proof will be on the pudding on that. But I just, on a quick sort of pushback on Andy, I'd sense quite a lot of fans were actually still against Ruben Amorim's comments in terms of the entitlement. So it's an interesting, I think it has been divisive, certainly. And I know what you mean about some support for him, but there's certainly been a lot of people that thought he's gone back again at these players. What's the point of that?
You mean rather than rowing back on the Amas comment in particular, where he said he's struggling,
double down,
and he's one player of the month? I mean, did he mean that he was struggling because the team are at the other end of the wrong end, of the championship table and not winning games? But he could have clarified that, I guess, in the next press conference.
Yeah, I think it's just the word entitled, where I agree with you, Andy, that there's certainly been instances where you've had younger players come through, expect them to be given everything that they would want from a first team perspective, and actually they still have some work to do. I just think that some people, and certainly I thought this, maybe that the word entitled, when you're attaching it to those three players as he was doing, it felt, and I know maybe he was speaking in more broad terms, but I think that felt quite pointed and unnecessary, as you say. So, but I think it's going to be an on-running thing, that this debate between the academy and the first team and Amorim's sort of view on it all. But I suppose ultimately it was in terms of sort of putting practice into your words, then you got Fletcher and Lacey coming on. So I know they called him O'Shea then, geez.
Utility man.
Yeah. So but I think overall in terms of January, I think they'll try and just do the business that they would want to do long term, not be reactive. But let's see.
Amorim described not wanting to make mistakes and said you don't want to get panicked, because that's been made before, which I'm like, oh, okay, Vegelson's bits weren't that bad. But we'll see. We'll see there. It's, to go back to the youth comments, I think there's a really interesting dynamic going on, because Amorim said more than once his door is open. And he was asked about Mainoo, he was asked about these young players, and he said, my door is open, and none of these young players have walked through it, which I can see the head coach perspective there of, my door is open, why are these young players doing things via social media instead of coming to talk to me? I can also see the sort of, I've not been an 18-year-old in a very long time, but I can also see that sort of 18-year-old thing of, well, why would I walk through this door? Because I don't really have that pre-existing relationship with you, if that makes sense.
I think you're spot on there, Carl.
That sort of teacher or lecturer dynamic of, my door is always open and none of these young people come to explain a problem. At what point does the teacher, the instructor, turn around and go, wait, why aren't they coming to me if they still are having these problems? Is there something I'm not quite doing? I'm not sure if we're at that point yet, but I can see both camps at this point in time. I think, look, needs must, and we are definitely in this AFCON period is looking like it might be an opportunity for maybe one or two of these academy players to make their mark, because they will be needed. I mean, if you're someone like Seko Kone right now, maybe now is the time to be walking through Amorim's door, knocking on the door and saying, hey, you don't need to play Lisandro Martinez in defensive midfield. I can do it.
Right, let's just come back to the January conversation if we can, because that little strand there went in different directions. So just to sort of nail it, Andy, are Manchester United well positioned to bring in any new players ahead of January?
I said about Semenyo a month ago on this podcast, didn't I? And you're like, whoa, what's going on here then? Well, what's going on is that Manchester United would like to sign him. He's got a release clause in January, and I stand by everything that I've said in regards to him. United feel that he could improve the team. He's flexible. I spoke to quite a few people about him. I'm sort of hoping for these sort of background, he's actually a Man United fan. He's not. He's an Arsenal fan, unfortunately. But Arsenal, I'm told, didn't want him. I think United will try as hard as possible to sign him, and there will be competition from several other clubs. I'm told Tottenham have got money. I'm told that Manchester City and Liverpool have also been of interest. So if you're watching or listening to this podcast, Antoine, I know you're a Cockney, mate, and you might not, but I know he's been surrounded by a lot of Man United people over the years, big United fans. So I'm just hoping, well, I know that he's in contact with some of them still, but he's just soaked in how massive Manchester United are. And if he's weighing up where to go to, then he could be thinking, I could be part of this great rebirth, playing for the biggest club by a distance in the Premier League. If you want worldwide celebrity, bring it on. Don't join City, join Manchester United. You'll be paid a fair wage. You will not struggle if you want to upgrade and go first class on your Avantis back to London to see your Cockney mates.
Oh, wow. First class travel.
You know what I mean?
United.
Are you sure everyone can afford that?
Yeah.
I mean, the prices have gone up a bit.
Yeah, you got a good point there. It is there. I think
Standard premium.
If Anton Semenyo or Elliot Anderson joins, I want Andy Mitten to get a commission here. Come on.
too right.
15% on the signing on fee.
Yeah.
I mean, Semenyo got a goal on the weekend against Burnley. One of those sort of half chance, one touch finishes that are becoming his trademark.
A Morgan Rogers finish.
There you go. He's one of the most two-footed two-footed players I've seen in the Premier League right now. Mark Carey did some stats last week, just after the 4-4, and I think it's 55 shots on his left foot, 45 on his right. He reminds me a lot of Sadio Mane in Mane's final season at Southampton, where he was just approaching this critical mass of talent, where the old school defending tricks of get the man out wide, get him on his weaker foot, just beginning to stop applying to him right now. You see more and more teams go touch tight on him to defend him, trying to foul him before he can turn and face goal. Because he when he picks up momentum, he's so strong, he's so quick, he's so good at using his body now to sort of either buy a foul or get into those more dangerous areas. I can absolutely see why there's so many clubs interested in him. Look, if he signs for Manchester United, he immediately becomes the world's most famous Ghanaian football player. I'd be absolutely delighted if he'd be here as well. Let's see. Because the way this release clause is structured and the fact they only last for the first 10, I've got a horrible feeling that it might be a little bit a case of the Cunhas or a case of the Xerxes, where the team who gets him might have to go over the release clause. If that makes sense. Laurie's pulling the face. He's like, wait, what are you on about? That's just the face you put.
I can see what you're saying there, Carl. Yeah, I can see what you're saying.
I think the wages is interesting because Manchester United would probably not be able to go as high as some of the other clubs if they really wanted him in terms of wages. I think Manchester United's have got some cash limitations, but the interest in him has been pretty long-standing. And if the player wants to join Manchester United like Cunha and Mbeumo did, then I think it would be very favourable. But I think it is quite a difficult deal to get done, given financial constraints and given the interest from other suitors. Give your head a wobble, lad. Join Manchester United.
Should put that on a t-shirt.
It's a deal that's changed in complexion just a little bit, because this week we also saw the CAF president announce that AFCON has changed. It's going to a 4-year cycle. So we're going to have an AFCON in 2027, one in 2028, and we won't have another one until 2032. So I think that might change 2 or 3 Premier League clubs' approach to recruiting in a little bit as well, including Semenyo. Fascinating January window we're about to have.
Yep, let's strap ourselves in and see what transpires over the next couple of weeks. Just before we preview Newcastle, I mentioned for the women's side, they signed off for Christmas with a 2-1 win over Spurs in the quarter-final of the Subway League Cup. They now have a semi-final to look forward to against Arsenal in the new year in that competition. Jess Park on the score sheet again, Fridolina Rolfo with a late winner for United too. So they sign off 1 point off the top three in the WSL, through to the semi-finals, like I say, in the League Cup, and also with a playoff against Atletico in February for a place in the knockout round of the Champions League. So I think Mark Skinner can be satisfied as he sits down to his Christmas dinner over how they've done so far. Let's preview the Boxing Day game then for the men's side against Newcastle. Laurie, who's going to play?
Oh, wow. Okay. Lisandro Martinez, number 6.
First name on the team sheet.
Yeah, first. Imagine. I mean, can he change it, really, too much?
Well, no, I mean, I looked. So Casemiro's back, obviously. But you've got the 3 AFCON players missing.
Bruno out.
Mainoo out, De Ligt out, and Maguire out. That's how it sounded, at least yesterday, that it's unlikely they'll be back for Boxing Day.
Does it? I mean, the only thing Yoro again had as we've discussed, a bit of a difficult afternoon. Does he rotate him with Martinez and shuffle it round a little bit at the back? I doubt it, just because obviously he's the right-sided centre-half and
needs the height as well. Set pieces against Newcastle, a big team.
Yeah. So, I mean, Sesko's first start, right, since he came back.
We've not talked about him, actually. I mean, he had a couple of really good opportunities in that first half again. That
first one, I know it's a good save for Martinez. He's up against Man United, the team that he wanted to join in the summer.
There was no way he was going off with that head knock, was there?
Exactly.
No,
I know. It looked like they were seriously debating it as well, weren't they? Yeah. But I mean, United didn't necessarily test him in the second half either. So, but yeah, it was good. He came out well, but yeah, he's a dink there, isn't it? And then even the second one, you're sort of thinking just a softer touch, and you could either win a penalty or obviously slot it in. I mean, to be fair, Martinez did pull himself away from contact, but yeah. So does Xerxes, come in for him just to kind of freshen things up? I don't know. I thought Sesko, actually, I know that he didn't runs he was making were pretty sharp, and I could see why he took him off, but I also thought that maybe that did then take away something from United's attack. It was interesting that Cunha was the one that got the header from Dorgu rather than Sesko, who was a bit further back in the box. Like, you're sort of thinking, if that had been Sesko, would that have been a goal? It's kind of more of in his wheelhouse. So maybe there's a debate there, but I don't think he can change it too much, can he?
So Amorim post-match said the plan for Sesko was 70 to 75 minutes. Fair. Because he's still recovering from food poisoning that he got earlier this month. Yeah, I don't think he can change it too much. I'd prefer Sesko to get a couple more runs of games. I think you're bang on about Yoro. In an ideal world, he'd be getting rested or taken out the line of fire, but unfortunately you have to play him. I'm not quite sure if Luke Shaw can do the middle centre-back role, even though he's deceptively good in the air. Yeah, it's tricky. It might just be same again. This Newcastle game feels a little bit like the Newcastle game last December, where you were half just going, all right, we'll take our lumps and we'll try and win the more winnable games afterwards.
But Newcastle have won one away game all season.
Yeah, I was about to say it.
Do you know what
exactly
I mean?
that.
But they've beaten Manchester United in 5 of the last 6 games. It's a pretty dreadful record against a team who just used to turn up against Man United and get beat year after year.
That strong midfield. Do you remember Eriksen Casemiro, wasn't it, against Newcastle last season under Amorim?
Well, even Ugarte and Casemiro, I think they've only started 5 Premier League games together across their time together at the club. The last one was in April, which was a 0-0 draw at Old Trafford against Manchester City. So they've not done it much.
And Ugarte's on that losing streak, isn't he? Is it 7 matches he started that they've lost?
Is that right?
Something like that, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So, I mean, to just play him just to hope to break that run, or...
Well, it's not just his fault, is it? But that's not a great record, is it, to be fair? But yeah.
I don't think he's as bad as he's playing. There has been times where he's had decent games, and I watched him yesterday and thought he wasn't good enough. And there's been other games like that. But there's been times, I can remember speaking to him after one game, or Casemiro, where they both played well together. If they do start,
Liverpool away was his best one, I think.
Yeah,
or maybe in City away last season, but
needs to be a big improvement. I mean, Newcastle had their own struggles, haven't they? They keep drawing 2-2. They're below Manchester United in the league, which a lot of people might not have expected. If you play for Newcastle United and you're trying to impress Manchester United, just hold your horses for this game, please. I think I'm just mentally scarred by the last few matches against Newcastle United. Home and away. The one last Christmas, that was the Xerxes one, wasn't it? It was awful. No repeats at all.
No repeats, I agree. That's not the way I wanted to end our final podcast before Christmas, but that's the way it goes, isn't it? And hopefully we'll get better on Boxing Day from Manchester United. But Andy, Carl, Laurie, thank you very much for being with us as always. Thank you for listening and watching along. Have a wonderful Christmas, and we'll speak to you after Manchester United play on Boxing Day against Newcastle. Take care. Bye-bye. Thanks for watching this episode of Talk of the Devils. Don't forget to hit subscribe if you've not done already. Like the video and also get involved in the comments too, and click the bell to make sure that you never miss an episode with myself, Andy Mitten, Carl Anker and Laurie Whitwell. There's also our social channels at TOT Devils on Instagram, X and TikTok. Thanks for watching.